So yesterday we talked about 5 reasons why heavy metal may potentially be dying or decaying, at least as a culture, not musically. For the music itself to actually die would take one hell of a catastrophic event, a real calamity. It would be really, really hard to do. Kind of impossible, actually, because whenever you think about it, jazz and blues are still incorporated into music. It's just that themselves as a genre, it's no longer a very prominent or big scene. Unless you ask a blues fan, then they're fucking hooked. Jazz as well, but you get the point. It's not something that's in the public eye the same way which it was perhaps in the 20s or 30s. But we're going to do the inverse today. We're going to talk about 5 reasons why heavy metal is not only alive and well, but it's why it's thriving, why it's full of life, full of death, full of destruction, full of mayhem. It's almost like a timid teenager that's ready to be unleashed upon the world. Hell spawn that is ready to destroy, or perhaps already in the process of doing so. So let's get started. Let's do this very, very efficiently with number 5, in stating simply that there seems to be a revitalized interest in the heavy metal genre, one that certainly feels like it's not a new idea, one that definitely feels about 10 to 15 years old, but instead, within that, it's certainly something that was not felt, for example, whenever I first entered high school at the latter portions of the 1990s. This was instead whenever the nu metal scene was really starting to pick up its legs and really take off. This is where a lot of people kind of came over a little bit, either that or at least got introduced to the concept of hard music, heavy music on the radio. And so, there you have it. It's something that's just a small stepping stone that actually led to further exploration. Something that is, something that needs to be happening a little bit more these days with intrepid exploration of various bands, various styles of heavy metal, or various styles of music in general, but definitely one where it seems like it started then, and it just has blossomed and become a bigger and bigger thing ever since then. For all the flack that perhaps I gave metalcore and deathcore and different scenes from the 2000s for having a little bit of a longer pattern of time in which they've been allowed to exist, not to mention the rampant overexposure that has kind of come from it, from the different bands that we've had that have been signed based around this. These are signings that probably could have very easily helped foster a new movement, either that or give a little bit more in the way of diversity to the genre at that time period. It's still one that also is able to bring in a lot more people. These are people that definitely feel like they're at shows because they want to be there, as opposed to individuals that are just there because they feel like if they don't, then heavy metal will never return to their area ever again. That was actually a threat at some points in time in the past, and, well, really here in Pittsburgh it kind of is too, but it's based around the fact that the venues down there aren't exactly the kindest. That's more politics than anything, though, and I'm willing to travel. That's the thing. A lot more people these days are willing to travel to events such as 70,000 tons of metal, the cruise, willing to travel to different locations for different festivals, whether it be ones that are on a regional or territorial level or ones that are actually a national thing. People that have gone to Prague Power, people overseas that are going to Wacken, people from America that are going to Wacken. I mean, it's crazy. There definitely feels like there's a big interest. There's going to be a huge boom, and this is something that's going to last a little bit. And number 4 goes right within that. It's actually hand in hand with it in the fact that there is a lot more interest between generations now. We're now actually getting closer and closer to heavy metal being 50 years old as a genre of music, as a style of music. Whenever we think about Black Sabbath and some of the proto-metal bands that came before it, well, we're right around that time 50 years ago in the 1960s. So we're talking 50 years now that heavy metal has been a part of musical history. So now, naturally speaking, we have fathers and mothers that have, daughters and sons that are metal fans. And we're actually getting pretty close to that whole 3-generation mark. And in fact, with some people, they may actually be there already. This is fantastic, too, because this actually showcases that that heavy metal is a style of music that actually can sort of be handed down. It's something where the history can actually bring people in just as much as perhaps listening to your first Metallica song, or hearing an Avenged Sevenfold track on the radio, or the first time that you ever laid eyes or learned about the history of Varg Vikernes and the black metal movement. There's many different reasons why you may get into this music, and one thing that definitely can help is if you have somebody there that already likes it and is proud of you for wanting to take this journey. It's almost like having somebody help point you in the right direction, as opposed to having to rely on one of your idiot friends that may push you to the next Rihanna album. It's a kind of a great thing, and I can prove that too. Sure, I'm not necessarily helping 1,000 metal fans, each of which with a son or daughter within my store. It's probably one that's not even 10, but that's still, 10. One of my most prominent customers is a heavy metal fan, just purchased the new Napalm Death record, is eagerly anticipating the new Venom record from the very depths that we just talked about on this channel, and he and his son both listen to metal. Sure, there are differences. There's father, who listens to thrash, black, death, grindcore, anything that's loud and obnoxious. And then son, who's more into your Avenged Sevenfolds, your Slipknots of the world. Something that's more modern, something that actually focuses a little bit more on his generation, but still has respect for that which his father enjoys. And it's kind of a weak example, but it's definitely one that definitely makes you feel good about the whole heavy metal genre as a whole, considering the next generation is being given the reins, and now they can essentially do what they want with it. And that's great. The third thing, the ease of access. I know yesterday, whenever we talked about 5 reasons why metal is dying, that I said that it was more and more difficult for information to get out there because the marketing just isn't the same. However, there are still a lot of people out there who just by themselves are able to really amass a lot of following based around the fact that you can now share anything with anybody. And so that does make the music a little bit easier to kind of share around to your friends and encourage them to check a band out. This is also something that's helping circulate their name and perhaps could lead them to a record deal. Another thing about the ease that certainly helps is the fact that now, based around YouTube playlists, based around the fact that there is this overwhelming assault of information that we get on a day-to-day basis, you can now listen to a reviewer such as myself, either that or read reviews on perhaps an underground magazine that's online, a blog or something like that, and you can find new bands. It's funny that whenever you think about things like this, you don't ever think about the individual who's finding Agalloch for the first time. I've had a lot of people tell me over the past couple of years, thank you for exposing me to Agalloch. Agalloch to me feels like a band that everybody who's a metal fan should know. But that's the thing. A lot of people are being exposed to this band just by hearing me say, you should check this band out. And that should be a model example for everybody who listens to this. What you say and who you say it to can be the simplest of steps between a group having just 14 followers to a group perhaps having 1,400 followers. Everyone helps, and that's actually what's going to cause heavy metal to explode even further in the future. Number 2, the camaraderie and the way in which I feel, this is a strong one, how I feel the heavy metal industry is going to handle itself going forward. This generation understands a lot about the struggles of not only getting signed and trying to get different things out there, trying to get music of a diverse taste out there, and definitely one that has experienced the struggle whenever perhaps it hasn't gotten done. This is a generation that also has witnessed the age where the internet, where downloading, and where streaming sites have essentially destroyed the whole physical idea. Vinyl's comeback is huge for this. Vinyl's comeback is massive, because metal fans have been collecting vinyl for years. There have been vinyl pressings of metal records for a lot longer than this most recent vinyl resurgence. This is something that's been going on for as long as I can remember. It's almost like in terms of heavy metal, vinyl never died. It's just that the number that were pressed became smaller and smaller. They became collector's items. They became collector's units. They became special event items that whenever you pre-ordered an album or whenever you sought out a heavy metal record that was coming out, that was what you wanted. That was the ultimate fan experience. And now it's something that's becoming commonplace. Now it's something that's actually encouraging the idea of collection again. Because now metal fans, not only do they want to have a CD collection, a music collection, but they want to have a record collection. I feel that because of this, heavy metal is going to be watching this with an eye for opportunity. This is going to be the way in which the stars of tomorrow are going to become even larger than life than they are right now. These are the ones that actually have all of the potential and all of the ability to transform heavy metal in the future. It's not only going to be based around the whole collectability aspect of vinyl and, collecting CDs. It's going to be based around the fact that the music itself, whenever pressed on wax, is going to sound so much better. There is going to be such a collector's demand for these items that there's going to be an explosion of music that's going to come from this. And it's going to be better marketed. It's actually going to have a little bit better tailored idea to it. This is going to be something where I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a second big metal boom based around it. And it's going to be based around the fact that bands are going to be looking for more creative outlets, more creative aspects to their tunes, something that they were able to do perhaps with the record player. Some person may listen to the newest Jack White album, for example, on vinyl, see the fact that he used all 3 speed settings to their advantage, and think to themselves, well, holy shit, I have the next big idea on how we can make this even cooler. And that's it. Ingenuity, the way in which people are able to go and just use their own power of human development to create something phenomenal and spark a revolution. I see that coming. I see collection becoming a huge idea. It already has started. It's only going to continue, and it's only going to foster the growth of heavy metal even more so. It's going to bring more bands to the forefront. And speaking of those bands, number one, we could say the music itself, but we're going to say this. The fact that some of the bands that are already kind of rising to the top, the ones that perhaps are not the ones that are selling major amounts of records, but we're talking like the Neobliviscarises of the world. These are bands that haven't even reached their prime yet. These are bands that are only about 2 albums in. Guys like Fen, guys like Alcé that are perhaps only 4 albums in. The Bay Area thrash metal, the second wave scene, the new American or North American thrash metal project, some of the black metal bands that perhaps have just started up because of this, the newer death metal slews. You may think that the big names are still the ones that are on the lips of everybody, but that's because they're not dead by a long shot. They're still making music, they're still kicking ass and taking names. But a lot of the great acts, the ones that are going to have the albums that whenever we talk in 20 years, are going to be listed as some of the most classic albums of its age. They've not even reached their prime yet. That classic album hasn't been written yet. And the excitement and the potential that all of that kind of causes, or at least spurns, is magnificent. Think of all of the great albums that we've talked about on this channel within the course of the past 5 years, and contemplate how many of those artists have not yet reached their prime. Contemplate how many times we've said that they're on the cusp of something brilliant, and that brilliance is still forthcoming, or that brilliance, perhaps, is still coming. Think about how many bands we've talked about, really within this past 5 years, that have been close and then reached that point. Think about how a band like Neobliviscaris, we talked about their first album and it was a magnificent surprise, and then all of a sudden we listened to Citadel last year and it's the album of the year. Just that quick, just that fast, from one album to the second. And now think about how many other bands that are out there that are just ready to push on through, that every single year it seems like we have at least 4 or 5 surprises. Things that come out of absolutely nowhere, out of left field, right field, center field, the fucking nosebleed seats, and impress the shit out of us. And I'm not talking just as individuals, but I'm talking as a heavy metal community that cause a wave that perhaps starts as a ripple, but then ends up as a tsunami. Now think about those bands not even being in their prime. Think about those bands doing something even better. Think about the potential that the next couple of years really spells. And then think about the fact that bands are going to come based around that. Think about the fact that legends have new albums on the horizon. Think about the fact that it's been about 5 years since the last Iron Maiden album. And when's the last time they've ever disappointed? Not in this millennium. At least not in my opinion. The potential is always ever present. The growth of this genre is almost guaranteed. And it's something where more and more people are going to be willing to come over to the dark side because something will catch their ear. Something different, something new, something unconventional. We're not going to attract everybody because we don't want everybody. We're not going to attract all of the people that listen to pop and rap exclusively. They don't want this and we don't want them. It's kind of a mutual respect type thing. We know they don't want to come to this side and we really don't want them to. But we know that there are lots of people out there that are curious. And the music that will be coming out of the next couple of years will not only satisfy their curiosity, but will be like opening the door and welcoming them to the metal experience. So what are 5 reasons that you think that heavy metal is still alive and kicking? Not only that, but also growing and prominent. Do you think that the video yesterday was correct? Or do you think today's is a little bit more of an accurate statement, an accurate sentiment, perhaps an accurate and very honest self-reflection of where heavy metal is in 2015? Let me know in the comments. Thanks for joining me.